You all for joining us today for the very first Bay Area Coalition Speaker Series. So next slide, please. Our coalition of 17 grassroots organizations and Democratic Central Committees is made up of more than 40,000 volunteers and a core team of very experienced organizing leaders who specialize in elections. Our mission is to effectively and strategically utilize this people power to win elections in key races to promote a democratic, equitable, and just society. Our goals, next slide, please. Our goals are to keep the Democratic majority in the House and the Senate, of course, and by supporting incumbent and new candidates, flip the Arizona state legislature, and protect and elect Democratic governors in our priority races. So we're in California. We are supporting races in California, Arizona, and Nevada. And we are using voter registration, voter engagement, phone banking, and canvassing. We hold phone banks every Wednesday and Saturday, and we have a special guest coming, Catherine Cortez Masto, on June 4th with our canvassing event in the California Central Valley. We have a candidate for Congress, Rudy Salas, is joining us. And if you are still feeling too tired to get engaged, we have a workshop for the weary activist on May 21st. So next slide, please. So this is the first of our speaker series. We are often the face of the Democratic Party while we make calls and knock on doors, and messaging increases in importance as we engage in conversations about issues that voters are most concerned about. The Bay Area Coalition is sponsoring a speaker series. Dan Pfeiffer is, of course, our very first speaker, but we also have Andrea Miller from the National Institute of Reproductive Health, and she will be joining us in June, right around the time we anticipate the Supreme Court decision will be made official. In July, to celebrate Bastille Day, we are honored to have Mike Lux join us. He is an acknowledged expert in blue-collar workers, and Mike will talk to us about why Democrats can win in 2020 and how we are going to do it. And then we will hear from Dr. Gabriela Lemus about messaging with the BIPOC community. So Democrats have taken this powerful community, their vote for granted. As a result, many Latinos are drifting toward the Republican Party. Dr. Lemus will address messaging as we contact BIPOC communities in Arizona, Nevada, and the California Central Valley. So thank you, Cecilia, for sharing the slides. If you could stop sharing right now. I am really pleased to introduce you to Dan Pfeiffer. And Dan is kicking off our speaker series this evening. And that's why you are all here, of course. The senior advisor to US President Barack Obama for strategy and communications in 2013 and 2015 through to 2015. Dan is just an amazing person, really. I don't know how he does it. He has 2 small children, one of the most listened to podcasts in the world, a bi-weekly Substack, and somehow he found the time to write a book. And it's a really important book for our time. Battling the Big Lie, How Fox, Facebook, and MAGA Republicans are destroying America. So Dan, please, everybody's so eager to hear you talk, please.
Well, thank you. I hope to spend much of the time answering your questions, but I want to just give a little overview of the political environment as we see it and how I see the role of everyone here on this call. But I want to begin by thanking everyone for being here. I know that there are a lot of people who are, as was mentioned in the introduction, a little weary. People are kind of frustrated with politics. There's a lot going on in the world in people's lives with inflation and a very persistent pandemic and just all the things that we wanted to do in 2020, but we were so busy working to get Joe Biden elected. And then 2021, we were working to save Gavin Newsom. And here we are back again with no rest for the weary here in California with the Bay Area Coalition. And so I want to start with the political environment as we see it today. And I want to use a very technical term to describe it, which is not good. And we just should be I want to be very honest with people. One of the things I've taken from 2016 to 2020 is there is a tendency among people who talk to groups like you guys, to Democratic elected officials, to not be straightforward about the challenges, right? To pretend like this is going to be easy, to get more people involved, to try to put as much spin on the ball as possible. And we should be very clear. The political environment as we stand today is bad for Democrats. It's bad for Democrats historically in the sense that it's the first midterm after a president is elected. That was very bad for Barack Obama in 2010, very bad for Donald Trump in 2018, very bad for Bill Clinton in 1994. The only exception in modern history to that rule was George W. Bush, and that came in the wake of 9/11 and the onset of the Iraq War, and a very fortunate political map for the president at that time. But just because just because it is bad today doesn't mean it will be bad in November, right? But ultimately, the things that are making it bad, and I mean we, from everyone from Joe Biden to Nancy Pelosi to Chuck Schumer to all of us, have very little control over. Right? We don't control inflation. We don't control the pandemic. We don't control Joe Manchin. We don't control what Vladimir Putin is going to do in Ukraine and how that's going to affect gas prices, grain prices, just people's view of the world. But here is the good news, is for at least the Senate and the governor's races, and the down ballot races in the governor in the states that are going to decide, control, basically whether we're going to have a free and fair election in 2024. In all of those states, we do not need to persuade a single person who voted for Donald Trump to vote for a Democrat. If we just get out the people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, that will be enough to defend Senate seats in Georgia, Nevada, New Hampshire, Arizona. It will be enough to win Senate seats in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. It will be enough to reelect Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. It will be enough to elect Josh Shapiro as a Democratic governor in Pennsylvania. And all of that matters incredibly much. Now, as I've done a version of this presentation over recent months, the other part of my good news, because we're all adults here. The other part of my presentation that was things aren't so bad was that redistricting had turned out to be so much better for Democrats than anyone had thought. There were actually, as of a month ago, most likely going to be more seats that Joe Biden won in 2022 than there were in 2020. That is no longer the case because of a court decision in New York, which was our biggest weapon in redistricting, and a much smaller stakes court decision, but one in Kansas, which has put Sharice David's seat likely in play. At least it was safe under the previous pre-court decision. But even still, it'll be the Republican advantage in the House has been going down steadily since 2010. So tough year. Not the best map in the world, but not as bad as it could be. And I sometimes think that, like, when you're faced with all of the challenges and the bad news and the unmet expectations and Mansion and cinema and all these other things, it can feel so daunting. Like, how can we possibly win? And I think it's easier to break it into a specific task. The specific task is we have to turn out people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020. That's it. If we do that, if everyone who voted for Joe Biden votes for a Democrat, we will win. We will not just keep the Senate, we will expand the Senate majority by 2, which would mean there are 2 certain senators who I'm sure you spent a year and a half or so now cursing. Well, their names won't have to cross your lips again, which to me is enough incentive to do anything in life. We would elect Stacey Abrams as governor in Georgia. We would reelect Tony Evers as governor of Wisconsin. We do a lot of really important things. And I think all of this matters because the stakes are so incredibly high. And I think they're as high as they have been at any point in recent political history. And I know that seems exhausting because, 2016, there was the existential threat of Trump. And then in 2018, we all came to you and said, well, we have to, if we don't defeat Trump, then if we don't take back the House, then who knows what Trump's going to be able to do. And then in 2020, we absolutely had to beat Trump. And then we came to you in 2021, so we got to save Gavin Newsom. But I want you to just think about what happened in the Pennsylvania primary last night, which is Doug Mastriano, who is as far right a candidate who has ever been a party nominee in a major state, won the governorship in Pennsylvania. He has pledged that if he wins the governorship, Pennsylvania's electoral votes will be awarded to Donald Trump, regardless of what the state does. Under Doug Mastriano's vision, doesn't matter if Joe Biden or whoever beats Donald Trump or whoever by 10 votes, 100 votes, 200,000 votes. Doug Mastriano's intent, he has pledged publicly to overturn the will of voters and send Pennsylvania and send a alternate state of electors to Washington, which would, even if that was all thrown into some sort of disarray, would likely has the potential to, at least in a close race, deny the presidency to Joe Biden, even if those electoral votes aren't counted, because it could drop him below the 270 margin, which means it goes to a vote in the House. And even when we control the House, we don't control the majority of state delegations in the House because so much of our majority comes from Pennsylvania, New York, et cetera. And like that is the stakes, right? And that is what is happening in Arizona. It's what's happening in Michigan. It's what's happening in Wisconsin. And every place where we do not win, where Republicans win, there is a chance they are going to try to steal the next election. But it's even bigger than that, right? And that's about as big as it gets, or at least maybe more immediate than that. And I think the leaked Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade kind of showed, like, sort of laid bare what is at stake and what is going to happen here. In large parts of the country, the day that opinion is released, and even if it's a slightly better version of that opinion, it is Democrat abortion will become illegal and you can look at Oklahoma earlier today, where Oklahoma passed one of the strictest abortion bans in the history of the country, and certainly in the post Roe v. Wade era, with no exceptions, essentially no exceptions. That I am a firm believer that if the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2025, they will pass a national abortion ban. So this idea that you could just leave, some of these red states and come to California or New York or somewhere else to get an abortion where it remains legal will not be possible. And Mitch McConnell, this is not me just like idly speculating for the purposes of firing on this group of people. Mitch McConnell said that. Kevin McCarthy said that. They said that that's something they would consider. And if you think Mitch McConnell's commitment to preserving the filibuster would continue under that scenario, I got a bridge to sell you, or a piece of land in Florida to sell you, or whatever the appropriate you're getting built metaphor is. And when you combine that with, it's easy to sort of take everything that's happening as these like individual outrages that flush through the system very quickly, right? Like Roe v. Wade's being overturned. This thing's happening. Doug Mastriano's bad. Look at, these candidates like Ted Budd, who won in North Carolina, who's another big lie believer, or Herschel Walker, who's likely to win the primary in Georgia in a couple of weeks. All of those things seem bad individually, but you got to sort of put it in context, right? So I want you to think about what the Republicans have done in the last year. They have sought to, for the first time through the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that whose majority includes 5 justices from presidents who received fewer votes than their opponent, all of whom are confirmed by a Senate that represents a minority of the American people, are going to pass a law or going to enact a decision or reverse a precedent that will, for the first time in recent history, take constitutional rights away from people in this country. There were people who will go to bed one night in late June, wake up the next day and have less autonomy, fewer constitutional rights than they did the day before. That is the stakes of what's happening. But it's not just that, right? In Texas, in Florida, and elsewhere, they are banning books. They are passing laws to decide what teachers can say. They have pledged that what they are coming for next is marriage equality. The Republicans want politicians to decide who you can marry. A whole bunch of states in the Republican-led states in this country have now passed laws dictating which sports trans youth can participate in. You have Florida passing laws to punish a private corporation for the things that it says or believes. And we are having a resurgence of a ethno-nationalist, Christian nationalist, theocratic, big government interfering in people's lives. And while this Republican government that is trying to weaponize inflation and gas prices, all these things to take power, they're going to get involved in our lives, and they're going to give corporations and the wealthy free rein to do what they want. Right? So they're going to care if Disney or whatever company is quote unquote too woke, but they will not care if Exxon pollutes our water, right, or ruins the planet. And that is like what we're up against. And I think I'm going to bring this back to the purpose while we're all here is the challenge we are all facing in our daily lives, talking to people, whether it's we're making phone calls, we're text banking, we're talking to our friends, we're talking to people who we were on these Zooms with in 2020 to try to get them to be on these Zooms in 2022, is complacency, frustration, apathy. And the best way to do that, right? I am not here to give you advice on how to convince your MAGA uncle to turn around and support, Josh Harder or Katie Porter or Gretchen Whitmer or whoever else. I'm here to tell you how to convince the person who voted for Joe Biden to vote for a Democrat this time, like to turn out to vote. Because Virginia is a test case. In Virginia, we lost for 2 reasons. Democrats turned out at a pretty high rate, better than 2017, but a giant gap from 2020. Republicans had narrowed their 2020 gap, but they also persuaded some Biden people to go vote for Biden Youngkin voters. We need to turn our voters out. We got to keep them from going to, we don't want Biden McCormick or Biden Oz or Biden whoever, right? We need them to support us. And so that is what we have to do. This brings it back to what Judah said, which is I spent the last year, basically since starting in December of 2020, when I wanted to just take a real break from things, writing this book called Battling the Big Lie. And the reason I wrote it was when I look back at the 2020 election, what became manifestly clear to me were 2 things. The Republicans had so outclassed Democrats on the size and scope of their messaging operation. I don't mean which talking points they use. I don't mean which people they booked on cable. I don't mean whether their campaign ads were good or not. I mean that they had built a massive apparatus from Fox, sort of embodied by Fox, powered by Facebook, a gazillion YouTubers and websites like Breitbart and Daily Caller that were drowning out progressive messaging. It was what led to the big lie to be believed. It created a context where 70% of Republicans could believe that the election was stolen. And they would believe that despite the fact that there was zero evidence, and Donald Trump's Supreme Court said that did not happen. Every court in the land, and yet they still believed it. And if we are going to prevent that from, we Democrats, and when I say Democrats, I don't mean the DNC, I don't mean Joe Biden, I don't mean Pod Save America, I mean you and me and everyone else we do this with. If we are going to prevail in 2024, we're going to prevent the insurrection from working, we are going to have to become better and smarter and more aggressive at fighting back against right-wing disinformation, propaganda, and agitprop. And so I wrote this book for the purpose of helping explain to everyone, and by everyone I do mean the DNC, the White House, and all of us, how this operation works, where it came from, who pays for it, but I think most importantly to me, what all of us can do about it. And the short, and I would encourage you, if you have any interest, to read the book. If you pre-order the book, I'm donating a portion of the proceeds to the Texas Library Association, which is fighting these book bans in Texas. But the most essential takeaway for all of us is that every single one of us has agency in the messaging battle. We have, on average, the people on this call, and I bet the people on this call are well above this average, have around between 150 and 200 contacts. That could be your Facebook friends, it could be your Instagram followers, it could be either people in your phone contacts, and we have the ability to communicate with those people. We may have friends who live in these battleground states. We have friends who are lapsed volunteers or lapsed voters or lapsed donors. We have people who are constantly saying, what has Joe Biden done for me? What have we done? We have the ability to educate them. We have the ability to push out positive messaging. We have the ability to push out responses to negative messaging. We have the ability to fact check, and we have the ability to respond. And my view has been for a very long time that the Democratic Party tends to treat our huge, massive volunteer donor base as telemarketers and ATMs. And I think that sells them short. And we have to treat them as messengers, people who can amplify the message, who can carry it forward, who can fight back. Because we are not going to build the liberal Fox News by 2024. We're not going to have the liberal Breitbart by 2024. We are not going to figure out how to fix Facebook by 2024. Mark Zuckerberg's not going to come to his good graces by 2024. Twitter seems like it may be going in the wrong direction by 2024. And so all we have is us. So that is my message to all of you is, first, thank you for everything you're doing. It is truly, the people who are still fighting so hard after having fought so long is truly inspirational. There is so much work to do, and there is an opportunity, and there is a chance. There is a chance if we get a little bit lucky and we do the hard work, that we can upend history. We can hold the Senate. We can win some important governor's races. That is before us, but it's going to take the work of everyone here and all the people that we reach out to. And I would be remiss, because I always do what Judith tells me to do. You can tell because I'm here. There is this tendency to think that Nevada is this very easy Democratic state because it is so diverse. Nevada is ground zero for the post-Trump electoral shift. It is a state with one of the highest percentage of working class voters in the country, which is why Joe Biden, we forget, because we're so focused on when those votes were going to show up in Georgia and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. He barely won. Okay, if we do not turn out for this phone bank and work very hard for Catherine Cortez Masto, she may be the most endangered senator. So she needs our help. So please, I encourage everyone to participate in that phone bank. So anywho, thank you. And I am open to questions or whatever Judith tells me to do next.
Thank you very much, Dan. And that phone bank is this coming Wednesday, May 25th at 5 o'clock, and we really could use your help. So thank you. So speaking of phone banks, we have a big debate going on the phone banks, and it really relates to what you were just talking about. So our goal is to motivate people to vote because it's so important. And what is an effective message? We've got somebody on the phone. The debate was, is the message that resonates with people? We are about to lose our democracy. Everything's at stake. We will never have free and fair elections if you vote Republican. Or is there really a better message that's not? I mean, all of us on this call today, I think we feel that way and we know that, but we're talking to people who don't really stay up with politics, and we're calling them at their home. So what is the best way you would think to motivate somebody?
I think too often, all of us, and myself very much included, have the democracy conversation in this theoretical way, as if democracy is a good in and of itself, right? Where if democracy falls apart, that's bad. I think that's overly theoretical for most people, because frankly, a lot of people we need to reach, democracy has not worked for them in a great way, right? If you are a Black person in America, a Latino person in America, if you're a working class person in America who has seen their wages not go up as the cost, not even just talking about inflation over the last year and a half here, but just over the course of the last 2 decades, where your wages stagnated, your ability to do the things that you from working hard you'd get to do with some Measure of Ease, prepare for retirement, send your kids to college, go out to eat every once in a while. If you say to those people, democracy is not working, democracy is in danger, they will say it's been in danger with me for a long time. So what I think the way to do this is we have to connect it to how it affects people's lives, right? Which is and there we can debate over words, but the basic point here is that a far right extreme minority in this country is trying to seize power at all costs to put in place an unpopular, dangerous agenda that includes, right? And then you can go from there, which includes, banning abortion, raising taxes on 100 million Americans, ending Social Security and Medicare. And some of the research I have seen says two things. One is that using the term MAGA extremist is very effective to describe the Republicans. We should not, one thing that research is pretty clear on is you shouldn't say Trump Republicans, because that actually gives people, for all the things that they don't like about Trump, they tend to think he is actually for the working class people. And so that, I know it's insane, but that it's like it's the blue collar billionaire thing. Like it's bullshit, but it does. Trump has had the ability, and one of the reasons he succeeded is and really one of the ways where he succeeded where Mitt Romney did not was people thought Trump would fight for the working class. People thought Mitt Romney got rich profiting off the working class, and Trump sort of created this alternate, somewhat separate identity of a more, he's business friendly, but he wants to fight for the working people. MAGA, was surprisingly enough in the research I saw, is sort of more evocative and more well-known and more evocative of the things they all hate about Trump without any of the good stuff. And the second piece of research is the agenda, which includes the things I said about raising taxes on 100 million people and any Social Security Medicare, is quite effective, right? And if you especially describe it, people ask you about it, like, they don't want to do that. You would say that the senator in charge of electing all the other senators is the one who proposed that, right? That is the way. So he's not just some random senator. He's the one in charge of this, all the Senate elections, is the one who said they would do that if they won.
Thank you. Yeah, I've often thought that people aren't really promoting the fact that Rick Scott wants his program, and the only platform the Republicans have right now is Rick Scott's, and he is in 5 years wanting to get rid of Social Security and Medicare, and I bet that would scare a lot of people.
It is my belief, and I'm not speaking for anyone other than myself here, and there may be probably many in the party disagree, but I think that the right message for the party is to speak to the anti-MAGA majority in this country, and to isolate, because it really is. It is an extremist minority that is trying to seize power by any means necessary, including having supported and now whitewashing a criminal conspiracy to overturn the election. And then that research is very important. You say criminal conspiracy, right? Insurrection is a word that means nothing to most people. January 6th, people know January 6th is bad, but if you use the word crime, criminal conspiracy to overturn an election, that is a very effective way to explain the gravity of what happened.
Thank you. So let's take a look at a recent primary election in Ohio. So how is it that J.D. Vance, who is on tape and in written words slamming Donald Trump, how has he, within months, completely remade himself as a MAGA accolade? And the people actually vote for him. I mean, what has happened to honesty and integrity and character in this country? And how can people believe in someone who is such an obvious opportunist? It boggles my mind.
It is how we got Trump, right? I mean, Trump was someone who he went to Chelsea Clinton's wedding, I think, right? He played golf with Bill Clinton. He had been, he talked about being pro-choice in the past, like and then all through that Republican primary, everyone tried to show him to be a hypocrite, a liar, all of that. And the voters did not care. And I think it's important to understand why. And it's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're gullible. It's not because they, watch too much Fox News, although that's part of it. The reason is, and this is why J.D. Vance won, it is why Trump won, it's why, either Dr. Oz or David McCormick win, it's why they win. The voters, there is a strong plurality within the Republican base who is scared to death that the America in which they have held preeminent position for their entire lives is going away. A white, straight, Christian version of America. And that it is under assault from various outside forces, immigrants, Black people, affirmative action, Hollywood, liberals, big tech. And they will take anyone, they will pick the person who they think will fight the hardest against that. That is why that belief is so incredibly strong among certain elements of the evangelical Christian community. And it's why they voted. They did not care that Trump had been married 3 times, cheated on all his wives, terrible father, because they wanted someone who was going to fight harder against this thing they're scared about. And that's how you end up with J.D. Vance, right? Everyone knows he's full shit. Like, it's obvious. Like, you can see the seams and everything. You can see the cards under his sleeves. He doesn't even believe what he's saying. But they do not care because they think he is going to be a better defender of this quote unquote vanishing way of life, right? That is what Make America Great Again is. It is a promise to return America to a different time, frankly, to the 1950s, right? That's why we are in the process of overturning Roe v. Wade. It's why we're rolling back the Voting Rights Act. It's all the things that changed America in a way that makes it's a distinct minority of Americans. It's not even a majority of Republicans, but it is a plurality of Republicans, and they believe that. And that's how you end up with J.D. Vance. They know exactly what they're doing. And whenever Democrats think that that voters are stupid, making a mistake, they are, I think, underestimating the intelligence voter. They know what they're doing. And that's a
Thank you. So we are making phone calls, knocking on doors, and as a result, we're talking to people, and we can bring truth to them, truth about science and facts, facts, remember those? What messaging, we hear this so often, both on our phone banks and canvassing, like, oh, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. They're all the same. Now, what would you respond to people who say that?
I think that is, this has been one of the great hardest questions to answer for decades in politics, right? We have a well-worn cynicism of the American people, one that's been of American politics as a people, one that's been relatively exploited by an overly cynical political press, and a failure of politicians to be honest, be straightforward with people about the difficulty of invoking change. Do people get cynical when they don't get what they want? But I think the best first step there is to listen to what it is they care most about. Right. And that is where, I am someone who is incredibly skeptical of the Dems deliver message as the centerpiece of our message, but finding the places where we did deliver, that is not an end of itself. That is sometimes table stakes for then having a conversation about what you're going to do next. That's proof you did something before. So if the reason they think the issue they care most about is their, is just their personal economic situation, who's the party who voted to send them stimulus checks, right? Who's the party that is trying to pass a big tax cut for them? And who's the party who has supported, who is proposing raising their taxes, right, is to try to get to some level of specificity on, but finding out what they care about is the best way, is then gives you at least a entry point to have a more specific conversation about the differences between the party.
Yeah, I like to say Democrats care, Republicans scare.
Yeah, there we go. Why you don't need me?
So talk to us about Facebook and Twitter. How concerned are you that Elon Musk completes his purchase of Twitter?
I think it is now, whether Elon Musk completes his purchase or not, inevitable that Trump will be back on Twitter if he runs for president in 2024. And I could actually make an argument that that would be one of the best things to happen in Democratic Party politics, because I mean, Trump, it was like we thought of it as this huge weapon of Trump's, and like his conduct was disgusting and he directed bullying at lots of people, and that's very problematic. I'm not saying it's not, but it was a way in which he constantly reminded everyone of how terrible he was on a daily basis. And I actually think I described this the other day as his Twitter ban was like the cone you put around a dog's neck to prevent them from hurting themselves. Is he just like, he's just saying insane things at these rallies that aren't getting coverage, or in these like written statements he's dictating to some poor, sad staffer of his, but they don't get coverage because it's not on Twitter. But I think so, and I think you could argue that round or flat, whether that's good or bad for Democrats or the world. It's definitely bad for the world if we can hear more of the things Donald Trump says. But I think he will be back on Facebook, back on Twitter, back on Instagram if he runs for president, since Jack Dorsey, the person who put in place the ban, has now said it was a mistake. And I think, and this gets back to why I wrote the book, is I have come to the conclusion that for the last 5 years, or however long it was since Trump, 6 years, 7 years since Trump sort of showed up on stage, the progressive response to the dominance of conspiracy theories, white nationalism, racist agitprop on these social media platforms has been to try to pressure the social media platforms and the networks and advertisers to take those voices off, right? To ban people, ban Alex Jones, ban Trump. Like ban Trump was such a big thing. It was a big part of Kamala, for a brief period, big part of Kamala Harris's primary campaign for the Democratic nomination. And I am not, and there was all these campaigns to pressure advertisers to boycott Facebook, boycott Fox News, efforts to get cable company, to people to cut the cord because of Fox, because what keeps Fox going is not advertisers, it's the carriage fees they get from being under cable. Like if you have cable, you are paying for Fox, whether you like it or not. And I have no problem with people holding companies, social media platforms, others accountable for adhering to the values they espouse, to the terms of service that affect the rest of us that don't seem to affect powerful politicians. But I've come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, that strategy is doomed to fail, because it relies on the goodwill of billionaire tech moguls like Mark Zuckerberg or maybe Elon Musk. It relies on major corporations and to make decisions that are good for the country, but may not be great for their bottom line. And there's just no precedent in history of relying on the munificence of rich people and corporations to get to an end. So where I think we should focus our energy is not on how we mute or silence or lessen the effectiveness of, I call it the MAGA megaphone, the conglomerate of voices that dominate media, but how can we build up our own, right? We have to focus on amplifying our content, because I think we have to decide that, yeah, it's going to be bad if Elon Musk buys Twitter. It's going to be bad when Trump's back on, but there's nothing we are going to do that's going to change that from happening. So what is the thing we can affect, right? Well, we can affect, instead of playing whack-a-mole with a bunch of right-wing nut jobs on these platforms, we can try to affect how many people hear our message, right? How we can fight back, how we can avoid getting drowned out by this stuff.
That's great. Thank you very much. I am now going to hand it off to Carol, who has been taking some questions from chat. And then if there is enough time, I see a couple of hands are up. If there is enough time, then we will let people speak, but the floor is yours, Carol.
Okay. I have been trying to monitor the chat the best I can, and we have a lot of questions that have been in there. So I'll try to start with Dan. Here's one question. What handful of races that are absolutely key would you recommend we donate to or commit our time to?
I think that the distribution of the races between the Senate, the governorship, and the statewide down ballot races all sort of fall in the 6 states that decided the presidential election: Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Hampshire. And in each of those states, we have an opportunity. And if we were to elect or re-elect Democratic governors in those states, then we will essentially protect, we would want, I think, protect the people in almost every one of those states, with the exception of Nevada. They have a trigger law that says that abortion will be illegal in that state when Roe v. Wade is overturned. This is the stakes, right? So take Michigan, where we have a wonderful progressive attorney general named Dana Nessel. She is running against a complete big lie believing far right extremist. Dana Nessel said that if Roe v. Wade is overturned and the trigger law goes into effect, she will not enforce it. If her opponent wins, they will enforce it with the full force of the law. And so I would focus our effort on those states, because everything you do to help Raphael Warnock in Georgia helps Stacey Abrams, right? And vice versa. Everything you do to help or whoever ends up being our Democratic nominee in Wisconsin is going to help Tony Evers, and vice versa, right? Anything you do to help re-elect Steve Sisolak or governor of Nevada is going to help Catherine Cortez Masto, and otherwise. There is a sort of rising tide lifts all boats in those states. So I would like, if I had limited resources, I would focus on those states, because you can get like 3 and 4 bangs for your buck between attorney general, secretary of state, governor, and senator.
Okay, thank you. And another question that's come up is, are there ways that we can counteract the belief that Biden is doing a poor job on the economy? That seems to be a big issue. People seem to think Republicans are better on the economy based on nothing really, but what can we say to them?
This is very hard. People are very upset about the economy. They're very upset about inflation. Inflation is very real. The people they're not watching too much CNN. They're not being tricked by Fox. They are feeling inflation, because where it's happening are the places that you cannot miss when gas prices go up. You have to fill up your tank. And then when you're not filling up your tank, you have to drive past the sign that shows you how expensive gas is, right? And you can't, groceries in gas are not like elastic expenses. Like, you have to feed your family, you got to drive to work, you got to drive to school, et cetera. And Republicans have had an advantage on this issue, other than during the period of Barack Obama's 2 campaigns. They've had an issue on this on every election since 1980. And even Trump, the only issue in which Trump outpolled Joe Biden for much of that campaign was on the economy. The only issue where the voters trusted him more. And so I think the best thing we can do here is talk about why Republicans are bad on the economy, what they want to do. This is the raise tax on 100 million people. This is they oppose the $15 minimum wage. This is sunsetting Social Security and Medicare, where you have to define. I think we're going to have more success defining them than we are going to convincing people who are suffering under inflation that we are good. I don't think it's an optimistic approach. I don't think it's particularly inspirational, but I think it's our best bet.
Okay. Let's see. Another question that someone just put in recently was, there's been a lot of great ideas presented tonight on messaging, but one thing is clear: how well Republicans seem to speak from the same playbook. And there doesn't seem to be any consistent messaging from Democrats. Is there an effort to address this, and where can we get approved testing messaging? I know that the idea of I'm not sure of her last name, but has been put in the chat, but maybe you can speak to that.
Sure. So there are a couple of places where you can get approved. There's no such thing as approved messaging, right? Where you can get smart people to give you some good ideas on what to say. Anat Shenker-Osorio has a wonderful podcast about this. She also, her Twitter account is very useful for this. She also, her communications firm, ASO Communications, puts out messaging guides on controversial issues like critical race theory. She's one of the smartest people in the progressive movement. Navigator Research, which is a conglomerate of Democratic polling firms that does message polling. You can sign up for, they put out their polling publicly. They put out results a couple times a week. They do message testing. Data for Progress is another polling messaging outfit. They put out a lot. They have newsletters. They put out polling on, they're a progressive populist firm, but they put out, or organization, but put out really important stuff. So those are some places there. I would say that we believe as Democrats, no one believes that Republicans are as smart as Democrats think Republicans are smart, right? So we were like, all their messages coordinating, they're singing off the same song sheet. They're great messengers. That they are not. They are piss poor messengers, pardon my French. They think about all the crazy stuff that Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, this guy Michael Loudermilk was saying crazy things today. They had Madison Cawthorn, Doug Mastriano, the candidate in Georgia. What is different, like we obviously have people who are, we are a more cacophonous, bigger tent. There's greater diversity ideologically, demographically, geographically in our group than the Republican group, but they got a higher percentage of complete nut jobs in their caucus. But what is different is they have a larger megaphone than we do. I call this the message versus the megaphone fallacy, which is we obsess about the things we say, and Republicans obsess about getting people to hear the things they say, right? And that is, so what Republicans can do is they can blow right past some insane thing what their members say, but when one of our members says something, or someone in our party, from the White House down to an activist somewhere random in America, the Republicans have the capacity from their much larger megaphone to put that in front of people. And so this is why I come back to over the medium and the long term, what we have to do is focus on, well, let me put it this way. In every messaging discussion I've been in since I got into politics more than 20 years ago, 90% of the conversation is about what we say and 10% is about how people hear it. And we have to reverse that, right? We have to focus on distribution of our message as much as creation.
Okay, and there's one other, I think that's very topical. How can we best use the Roe v. Wade issue to get women and people to the polls? And this also involves messaging. What kind of messaging works around this?
The single best testing messages that I have seen about overturning Roe v. Wade is that Republicans want politicians and the government to be involved in private healthcare decisions between a person and their doctor, right? It is that interference in people's personal life is the best message. And with the way we get people to polls is we talk about it, and we bring it up and we put it in the larger context of what it really means, in terms of how it'll affect people's lives, what's coming next, right? Contraception, bans on IVF, gay, marriage equality across the board, is that Republicans want politicians more involved in your personal life, your healthcare decisions, whom you marry, what you read, what you learn, what sports your kids participate in. That's what Republicans are trying to get into your life like that. And so, but we have to talk about it, right? I think one thing I often talk about with people is something called issue salience, right? Which is how important is an issue to someone how hot top of mind is it in the election? What are they worried? Are they thinking about? Are they worried about? Right? You can poll, you see this with education all the time, right? Which is like, people are really passionate about, like, they support education, but they say education is very important, but it is very frequently disconnected from their vote decision. And so if we want people to think about Roe v. Wade and abortion and all the other infringements on the right to privacy in this country, then the way to do is we have to talk about it. We talk about it all the time with this shout from the tallest rooftop, because if we don't, our short attention span, the right-wing message machine, the media, which is always looking for whatever for conflict and new, is going to move away from it. So it's going to be on us to make sure people are thinking about it on election day.
So Carol, we have time for one more question.
One more question. Okay, gosh, there's been so many questions and a lot of them are good questions. But I like this question. How effective is the use of humor to counter the big lie? An example is the Birds Aren't Real movement.
I think that humor, I mean, this is sort of a core to what has made Pod Save America. It's core to who we are as Pod Save America, is this idea that it's okay to be fun, right? Is like politics is about encouraging people to do things, to volunteer, to canvass, to vote, to join our movement. And people do not join things that are not attractive, that aren't fun. And so I think fun is good. And I think what is good about the Birds Aren't Real movement, and there are some other people who do this very smartly on TikTok to fight back against disinformation, is I think laughter is an effective way to fight lies. But what is important about the laughter, and I think this is so important, is the derision. The butt of the joke has to be the person who is spreading the lie, not the person who's believing it. Too often, the way we respond to this thing is like, this is where the charge of democratic elitism has some credence, is look at these gullible rubes who believe that Donald Trump, this known liar, really won the election, right? Or look at all these people who are not getting vaccinated, what horrible people they are. And we should be mad at the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the Sean Hannitys of the world, the people who have spread the lies about these things. It's the liars and the people who believe the lies who should be the butt of that joke, right? Where our derision should come.
So it's the snake oil salesman, not the person who's got.
Yes, we are going after the salesman, not the consumer in this case.
That's great. Well, you answered that one really quickly. Carol, do you have one more?
I wasn't thinking.
Okay.
But I can certainly find one here.
Also, Amy has her hand up. Maybe if
okay,
you could unmute,
sure.
maybe you could ask a question, Amy. Make sure you're unmuted.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all your straight talk, Dan. No kidding. You've got a lot of phone bank leaders on this call. Sounds like the scripts need to be rewritten. No longer the theoretical, the practical. And so my basic question is, right, who is the official messenger for the Democratic Party? We need to get your message to them. Are you working for, the Democratic Party itself yet? Could you make this stuff happen so that, because the Republicans won the messaging war before, but how about winning it this time with your smart talk and with the basic anti-MAGA, get the lie, exactly what you said.
Well, I don't work for anyone other than I don't work for the DNC. I don't work for the White House. I talk to lots of people. For maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. I've been around for a long time. There's a collection of the people who helped get Barack Obama elected a couple of times. We talk to people, we talk to each other, it is, but I think that there is, so whatever knowledge I have, for whatever it's worth, it may not even be worth the price of admission to this call, which I imagine free, that I try to share it with as many people as I can. What I think, and one of the things that has led me to to write this book, to do this podcast, to write a newsletter called Messagebox, which you can subscribe to, where I can't even believe I had to pitch my own newsletter, but messagebox.substack.com is one of the reasons I write it, is to give messaging advice, not to the DNC, not to the White House, not to Senate campaigns, but to all of you, right? To help to write, like my came to the conclusion that what we need to do is push autonomy and information down, because there is no magic war room in Washington. There's no place where like the 6 smartest people get together on a whiteboard and figure out the message. It's messy, it's cacophonous. And so I think the best way to do it is distributed messaging, right? That we are going to give tools and information to smart, committed citizens and let them go about the work of doing it. And so whether you get that message from Data for Progress or not, it's why she does her podcast and does so much of her public stuff, whether you get it from me on Pod Save America or at messagebox.substack.com, the point is that we want to give, no one is going to solve this problem. No one's going to answer it. No one's going to give you exactly what to say. We just got to go out and do it. And so Like this is, we're gonna be much better off. It's Barack Obama's oldest, most believed adage of politics, which is change comes from the bottom up. And that's all of us, right? But no one's gonna fix this problem. No one's gonna give you the right answer. But my goal is to give you, and a lot of other smart people, smarter than me, want to give you information to make decisions on how to do it and let you go about your work, right?
Dan, thank you very, very much. Carol?
One other quick thing is that people are wondering if they've been on this call, if they will get the recording of this
Yes.
evening so they can send it on to friends
Absolutely.
or watch
And
it.
we'll put it on our YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
Yep, it'll be available to everybody. And so thanks to everybody for coming this evening. Messaging, just like Dan was talking about, starts from the bottom up, and we have a couple other people coming. In June, we have Andrea Miller talking about messaging around women's reproductive rights, just as the Supreme Court decision is coming out. Then we have Mike Lux talking about the working class, and he also agrees with Dan. He thinks that we can win. So it'll be great to hear from him. And then we have Dr. Gabriela Lemus speaking about the BIPOC community and messaging for that wonderful community as well. So stay tuned. We will be sending everybody the links to those events. Again, Dan, thank you so much. Your words were really helpful. Things are kind of disconcerting in the world, and you really gave us some helpful tools to help deal with it. Now, I hope
Thank you, everyone.
yeah. Buy his book. It's great. You need that ammunition, and please join our phone banks. Please come here, Senator Masta, on the 25th. And thanks everybody for coming this evening. And thanks to the team, Carol, Cecilia, and Maria, for your help tonight. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Judith, people are wondering about the link for the YouTube channel
Yeah, we'll give it to, it'll be in an email to.
in an email. Okay.
So we'll send it to all the partner organizations, and they can send it to their people.
Okay.